Hey, God's chosen one. You didn't arrive here by chance. It wasn't a missed click, nor a passing distraction. This moment was written before you existed. Heaven knew that one day you would need to hear these words. The time of silence is over, and your voice will be heard. For a long time you walked lonely roads, carrying within you questions that no one seemed to answer. You wondered why your prayers echoed as if they were bouncing off invisible walls. You wondered why, even though you had so much to offer, your voice seemed muffled by the noise of the world. And deep down you wondered, has God forgotten me? But here is the truth that heaven reminds you. It wasn't forgetfulness, it was strategy. The silence wasn't rejection, it was preparation. You weren't being ignored, you were being guarded. Your voice wasn't muffled, it was being tuned like an instrument that only plays at the right time. God's silence is never empty. It is in silence that He works at the roots. It is in silence that He shapes the depths. It is in silence that He prepares those who were not made for the ordinary, but to carry an eternal purpose. You are one of these. You are not the product of chance, nor a passing shadow. You are someone who is designed to carry a word, an influence, a mark that time cannot erase. But so that your voice would not be confused with the noise of the world, a period of silence was necessary. Think about it. When the potter works the clay, there is no applause, no audience. There is only the hidden process, the firm movement of the hands shaping every detail. And the vessel often doesn't understand why it is being pressed, broken, remade. But the potter knows. He sees what is not yet visible. He prepares the vessel to be used at the exact time. So it was with you. You looked back and saw closed doors. You saw opportunities slip away. You saw people advance while you stood still. And all of this seemed like punishment. But heaven declares it wasn't punishment, it was stoning. The time of silence wasn't wasted time. It was time invested in the invisible, so that now, in the visible, you carry authority. Because not just any voice transforms. Not just any word breaks chains. Not just any sound opens paths. It is the voice born of silence with God that carries prophetic weight. And your voice, now, is ready. Ready to be heard. Ready to echo not just between walls, but between destinies. Ready to resound like a trumpet in times of battle. Ready to heal wounded hearts, awaken sleeping souls, ignite lives with hope. Listen within yourself. The time of silence is over. You are no longer invisible. You are no longer ignored. What was hidden will be revealed. What was suppressed will be amplified. What was bottled up will be released. And it all begins here, today, now. It's not about vanity. It's not about fame. It's not about seeking human recognition. It's about destiny. It's about purpose. It's about fulfilling the calling for which you were sent to earth. You may even think you don't have the strength, that you're not ready, that your voice is still too small. But heaven answers. Your voice doesn't just carry sound, it carries anointing. And when God anoints a voice, it doesn't matter if it's soft or loud, because the power isn't in the volume, but in the source. And the source of your voice is the throne of God. So, prepare yourself. Starting today, the world will hear what was hidden within you. Prepare to be an answer where there were only questions. Prepare to be light where there was only darkness. Prepare to be a living witness that silence was not the end, but the beginning of something greater. You didn't get here alone. God's hand sustained you through every tear, every weight, every dawn when you thought about giving up. But you didn't give up. And so heaven decided to proclaim, the time of silence is over. Now take a deep breath, lift your head, look ahead, and listen carefully. Your voice will be heard. It wasn't forgetting, it was preparation. The time of silence is over. My voice will be heard. You know well the weight of silence, not the silence of peace, of rest, of contemplation, but the silence that screams from within. The silence that hurts more than 1,000 words of rejection. The silence that comes when you speak, but no one listens. When you dream, but no one believes you. When you give your best, but it seems the world decides to turn away. This silence hurts. It creates invisible scars. It leaves unanswered questions. It makes you wonder, does my voice not matter? Was I born only to observe and never to be heard? You know what it's like to be interrupted, underestimated, discarded. You know the feeling of opening your heart and receiving only indifference. You know the bitter experience of having words choked up because you realized no one was interested in listening. And little by little, this silence imposed by the world tried to suffocate your essence. But let me tell you something. The silence men gave you is not the same silence God established over your life. Human silence tries to silence you. God's silence tries to prepare you. While some tried to silence your voice, heaven was sharpening your message. There is a profound difference between being silenced and being kept. And you need to understand that it wasn't silencing, it was preservation. You weren't ignored, you were separated. You weren't forgotten, you were reserved. The silence that wounded your heart was also the silence that matured your soul. You learned to observe when you wanted to speak. You learned to listen when you wanted to respond. You learned to be silent when everything inside you screamed for justice. And it was in this hidden training that God gave you something many lack: depth. Shallow people speak hastily, but they don't make an impact. You, however, carry the weight of silence, and that is what will give authority to your words. Every hidden tear will turn into anointing. Every lonely night will turn into compassion. Every moment you were ignored will become fuel to reach those who also feel forgotten. The pain of silence will not be wasted. You thought you were wasting time, but you were accumulating unseen treasures. You thought you were being forgotten, but you were being molded. You thought you were alone, but all of heaven was with you. Remember, even Jesus experienced silence. On the cross he cried out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" And in that instant, it seemed as if all of heaven had closed its ears. But it wasn't abandonment, it was purpose. The apparent absence of God was the setting for the greatest revelation in history. The same is true for you. The silence was not rejection, it was a stage for revelation. And soon, what seemed muted will transform into a prophetic voice that no one can silence. The time of silence was painful, yes, but this time taught you to value the sound of your own voice. This time showed you that you do not depend on human applause to exist. This time taught you that your identity is not in opinions, but in your calling. And now, when your voice is heard, it will not be just one among millions. It will be like thunder in the desert. It will be like a trumpet in the battlefield. It will be like a divine whisper in broken hearts. It will be like fire that ignites what was cold. It will be like light that breaks through the densest darkness. You have felt the pain of not being heard. Now you will feel the authority of being raised to speak. You've already experienced the solitude of silence. Now you will experience the honor of carrying a voice that cannot be ignored. The silence that wounded was the silence that formed me. I was not silenced, I was prepared. The time for my voice has come. Have you ever noticed how pain has the power to reveal who we truly are? Pain is not comfortable. It is not pretty, nor is it desired. But it is in pain that the truest voice emerges. It is in the fire of tears that the word that carries weight is born. It is in the deepest valley that the message that has authority is formed. You were wounded, but not destroyed. You were pierced, but not nullified. And it is precisely from this pain that your voice will be born. Not just any voice, but an anointed voice, a polished voice, a voice that bears the marks of survival. People may try to silence you, they may even despise you, but no one can erase what was born of pain. Because pain, when surrendered to God, transforms into strength. It ceases to be just a wound and becomes a scar that speaks. And scars have a unique language. They say, "I was there, but I survived." Your voice is not theory, it is testimony. You don't speak of what you heard, you speak of what you lived. You don't preach an abstract idea, you proclaim an experienced reality. And that's what gives your voice authority. You know what it's like to feel alone. You know what it's like to be rejected. You know what it's like to face nights when no one understood you. And now, when you speak, it's not empty, it's life. The pain that tried to break you was the same pain that gave you depth. People who have never been through what you've been through may speak, but their words don't carry the same weight. Your silence was the cradle of your depth, and your pain was the field where your authority flourished. You need to understand this. Your voice will not only be heard, it will be recognized. People will notice that there is something different in what you say. They won't be able to explain it, but they will feel it. Because what is forged in pain has an anointing that cannot be imitated. Look back, every tear, every heart, the feeling of loneliness, every time you wanted to give up, all of this now becomes fuel. The enemy thought he was silencing you, but he was only creating the pressure necessary to make your voice even stronger. He tried to extinguish your fire, but ended up scattering the embers. He tried to silence your song, but ended up making it even more powerful. You didn't realize it, but it was in the desert that your voice began to be born. And it is in the desert that prophetic voices always arise. John the Baptist was not born in the palace, but in the wilderness. He grew up not surrounded by applause, but by the silence of the dry land. And it was from this silence that the voice that shook a generation was born. So it will be with you. You were not called to repeat, you were called to echo. And echoing is not simply speaking loudly, it is resonating into eternity. It is generating an impact that transcends the limits of time. Your voice is not for fleeting moments, it is to move destinies. So don't be ashamed of your pain. Don't curse the silence you've experienced. Don't despise the days when no one wanted to hear you. Those were the days when your voice was being formed. And now, that voice is ready to be born. The world doesn't need rehearsed speeches. The world doesn't need soulless words. The world doesn't need pretty, empty phrases. The world needs your truth, your story, your pain transformed into life, your silence transformed into a trumpet. You will realize something. When your voice rises, it will reach those who are also silent. It will awaken those who think they have nothing more to say. It will reignite flames that were extinguished. Your voice is not just for you. It is for many. What was born from your pain will heal pain. What was born from your silence will give courage to others who also feel silenced. You are like a spring that seemed dry, but now overflows. And when you open your mouth, rivers will flow. Not because you think you are strong, but because you have learned to depend on God's strength. And this dependence gives your voice a power that no one can manipulate. Pain will not be your prison. Silence will not be your grave. They were merely the fertile soil for the birth of your voice. And this voice, marked by pain and grace, will be impossible to ignore. From pain was born my voice. From silence was born my authority. Nothing can silence the sound that heaven placed in me. There is a moment when heaven decides to intervene. A moment when silence is no longer the school, but the prelude to revelation. You've borne the weight of feeling ignored, rejected, and even invisible. But there is a set time when God breaks the silence. And when He breaks, it's not timidly, it's not hesitantly. He breaks with authority, like thunder that shakes the earth, like a light that cannot be hidden. You've grown accustomed to speaking and not being heard, but the moment will come when you open your mouth and heaven will echo with you. Your voice will not be alone. It will be accompanied by the heavenly sound. It will be as if each word carries the weight of eternity, as if each phrase carries an irresistible anointing. God's silence was never indifference. He was watching. He was measuring your faithfulness. He was probing your heart at a time when you had no stage, no spotlight, no applause. Because when heaven breaks the silence, it's not for just anyone. It's for those who have learned to value sound after enduring silence. Remember, the same God who remained silent for 400 years before Jesus' arrival was the same God who spoke so powerfully that he divided history. Likewise, the same God who seemed silent during your nights of tears will be the same God who will speak so loudly in your life that no one can ignore him. Heaven doesn't speak just for the sake of speaking. When he speaks, he changes destinies. When he speaks, he rewrites stories. When he speaks, he breaks chains that silence has built. You might think, but why did it take so long? Because waiting gives weight to sound. If you had been heard when you wanted, you might not have had authority. But now, after so much silence, your voice will have density. It won't be empty. It will be filled with fire. The breaking of heaven is always accompanied by signs. Sometimes it's a door that opens unexpectedly. Sometimes it's a divine connection you never imagined. Because God's voice doesn't ask for permission, it simply speaks. And your voice is about to be enveloped by this breaking. It will no longer be you trying to make yourself heard. It will be the God himself amplifying your sound. He will make your voice reach places you could never reach alone. He will place spiritual weight on every word. He will transform what was once just pain into living testimony. You will notice that the difference will not be in volume, but in impact. You won't need to shout to be heard. You won't need to fight for space to stand out. What comes out of your mouth will have a life of its own because it will be imbued with the Spirit, and people won't be able to ignore it because it won't just be you speaking. There is an instant when the sky not only breaks the silence, but echoes the sound of the turning point. This sound is not just external. It begins within you. It is like the crackle of a flame that seemed extinguished, but suddenly ignites everything around it. It is like the beat of a celestial drum, marking a new beat on your journey. You have felt the monotony of the days, the tiresome repetition of endless waiting, but now a different note has been played. The rhythm has changed. The sound of change is the sound of change that no one can foresee. It's not just an opportunity, it's an atmosphere. It's not just a door, it's a redirection of paths. It's not just a human favor, it's heaven interacting with earth. You always knew your story wouldn't end on the page of pain, but what you perhaps didn't imagine is that change would have a sound so clear, so distinct, so impossible to ignore. This sound is not for everyone. It is not heard by carnal ears. It is not perceived by the distracted. It is heard by those who waited in silence, by those who endured rejection, by those who remained standing when no one else believed. You are one of them. You learned to endure the wait, and now heaven decides to reward you with a new frequency. The sound of change is like the echo of spiritual trumpets announcing, the time has changed, the cycle has ended, the season has turned. Imagine the sea that seems still, but suddenly the tide begins to rise, bringing with it boats that were stuck on the sand. This is how it will be for you. The sea of your life is receiving a breath of the Spirit, and the tide is shifting in your favor. What was once blocked will begin to flow. What seemed blocked will begin to open. What was closed will begin to respond to heaven's command. This shift will not come timidly. It will not be a change you need to prove or explain. It will be evident. It will be palpable. It will be undeniable. Even those who doubted you will recognize something has changed, something has happened, something has been released. The sound of the shift will also be felt within you. You will perceive a courage you didn't have before. Words will begin to come from your mouth with clarity and authority. Faith that seemed small will become gigantic. You will walk in places where you once hesitated, and your voice will carry weight where before it was only a whisper. Not because you grew stronger on your own, but because heaven decided to amplify your presence. What you've experienced so far has been the formative phase. Now the manifestation phase begins, and the difference will be the sound of favor, the sound of honor, the sound of recognition that is not sought, but given by God Himself. You may ask, how will I know the turning point has arrived? You will know because nothing will seem the same. Conversations will change. Opportunities will change. Even your enemies will change the way they talk about you. Some won't dare mention your name because God's presence around you will be so evident that their tongues will tremble before touching you. Others will have to acknowledge, even unwillingly, that you carry something that can no longer be denied. This is the sound of the turning point. Not a manufactured sound, but a heavenly sound. Not a sound that seeks a stage, but a sound born from the secret. And when this sound begins to spread, it transcends boundaries. It enters rooms you've never been. It puts your name in places you never imagined reaching. It opens doors that have been sealed for years. The sound of change is also the sound of realignment. The right people will begin to appear. Toxic relationships will begin to dissolve naturally. Divine connections will emerge effortlessly. Because when the sky decides to turn the tide, no one can resist. Nor do you need to force it. What once required a struggle will now flow like a river. And that's exactly what the sky is doing, turning its tide. Turning silence into testimony, turning rejection into recognition, turning tears into celebration, turning deserts into rivers, turning you into someone who not only survives, but bears witness. The sound of the turning has already begun to echo, and each beat of that sound is a confirmation. You have not been forgotten. You have not been rejected by God. You have not been left behind. What seemed like a delay was merely preparation, and now, at the right time, the sound of the turning announces, heaven has decided it is your time. The sound of the turning has already echoed. What was blocked is moving. What was closed is opening. The season has changed, and I walk on the new tide of God's favor. From the womb of silence, God has always cultivated a voice, and that voice is yours. Not just any voice, but a voice shaped by tears, by whispered prayers, by nights when no one saw, but heaven heard. The truth is, you have often been silenced. Silenced by people's indifference. Silenced by the rejection of environments that failed to recognize who you were. Silenced by the weight of circumstances that seemed to crush your heart. And even silenced by your own doubts, which echoed louder than your faith. But heaven never allowed this voice to be lost, because it is not just yours. It carries a seal. It bears the mark of one who has been called and set apart. It carries the essence of God's purpose, and what carries purpose cannot be silenced forever. Have you ever noticed that even when you were silent, there was something speaking for you? Your perseverance spoke. Your silent faith spoke. Your character spoke. Your resilience in the face of the storm spoke louder than any words could. And that's how heaven proved that your voice was never silenced, just saved for the right moment. Enemies tried to reduce you to an impactless silence. Some thought that ignoring you would make you disappear. Others believed that your story would lose relevance when you were no longer mentioned. But what they didn't know is that, in the spiritual realm, you never stopped being news. While on earth they tried to silence your name, in heaven the angels continued to declare who you were. While in the natural world there was silence, in the supernatural there was an echo. You were trained in silence to learn to speak with authority. And this is the secret that few understand. God's silence is not abandonment, it is training. He was honing your voice so that when you spoke, your words would carry weight. Not human weight, but eternal weight. Now, the time for silence is over. Your voice will be heard. Not because you will shout, but because God Himself has decided to amplify the sound of your existence. You will speak, and hearts will be touched. You will pray, and heaven will move. You will declare, and situations will respond. This voice is not limited to sound. It is presence. It is authority. It is a spiritual mark. You will enter spaces, and even without saying anything, your presence will already carry a message. Because God is placing within you a voice that transcends natural barriers. And no one can silence this voice. Not human authorities, not spiritual enemies, not criticism, not comparisons, not fears, not limitations from the past. Because the voice that God awakens is invincible. This voice does not exist for self-promotion. It exists to proclaim the truth. The truth that you were chosen, the truth that you have not been defeated, the truth that God's favor rests upon you, the truth that even when they wanted to bury your story, heaven resurrected your name. The power of this voice lies not in its height, but in its roots. It springs from a heart that has experienced deep pain. It comes from someone who has walked through dark valleys. It is born in someone who has cried in silence and still chosen to believe. Therefore, when you speak, the spiritual world will recognize your authority, because these are not just words. They are marks of survival transformed into prophecy. Perhaps you still feel too small to believe this. Perhaps you still see yourself as ordinary. But that is precisely where greatness lies. God chooses ordinary vessels to carry extraordinary messages. Your voice will be living proof that heaven uses what the world has despised. Hear this. You no longer need to ask for space. You no longer need to beg to be heard. You no longer need to beg for attention. Heaven itself is opening the platform for you. The amplification will not be human. It will be divine. And when God decides to amplify, no opposing force can reduce the volume. His voice is liberating. His voice is healing. His voice is prophetic. His voice is the echo of everything. What you endured and overcame, it will not be forgotten. It will not be stifled. It will not be ignored. And even those who once tried to silence you will have to listen. Not because they want to, but because God's favor will place your voice in places they cannot stop it. Your voice will reach territories your feet have never touched. It will be remembered in rooms you have never entered. It will be reproduced in hearts you have never known. This is the power of a voice that carries the breath of heaven. And here is the final truth of this chapter. You are not called to live mute before your purpose. You are not called to watch in silence while others live their story. You are called to declare, proclaim, prophesy. And the world will hear, because your voice is not just sound, it is destiny. My voice will not be silenced. Heaven amplifies what I carry. I speak with authority, I live with purpose, and my voice will echo beyond what I can imagine. There is a strength that reveals itself not when you're on stage, but when you're in the valley. Not when everyone applauds, but when no one notices. This strength is not born of excess. It is born of scarcity. It does not arise from comfort, but from pain. It is not built on applause, but in silence. And it is precisely this strength that you carry now. The strength no one saw coming. For too long, they looked at you and saw only fragility. They judged you by your appearance. They judged you by the moment. They judged you by your tears and thought, it's over. But what they didn't see is that, while they thought you were broken, heaven was rebuilding you. While they believed you were weak, God was depositing a supernatural strength within you. This is how heaven works. It hides strength in unlikely places. It stores power in vessels the world despises. It chooses those who have been rejected to manifest authority. And that's what he did with you. The strength you carry today isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's spiritual. It's resilience. It's the ability to remain standing in places that have knocked many down. It's the power to keep walking when your feet give out. It's the ability to smile even when your heart is broken. This isn't human. It's divine. People didn't see you praying alone. They didn't see you fighting thoughts that tried to destroy you. They didn't see you crying silently and still saying, I trust in you, Lord. They didn't see you carrying the weight of life on your shoulders and still carrying on. But heaven saw, and what heaven saw was enough to unleash upon you a force that cannot be explained. The force no one saw coming is the same force that will now surprise many. Because they expected your downfall. They bet on your failure. They counted on your giving up. But when they least expect it, they will see you standing. They will see you advancing. They will see you conquering. And they will have to admit, it wasn't human strength. It was God. This force is silent, but powerful. It doesn't need to be announced. It manifests itself. It doesn't ask for permission. It reveals itself at the right moment. It's like an underground river, flowing beneath the dry earth. No one imagines there is water flowing there. But when the time comes, the spring gushes with power. And that time is now. Your strength will gush forth. Your resilience will become evident. Your inner power will be seen. And everyone will know. There was something hidden within you that could not be erased. Perhaps you yourself haven't realized this strength. Because those who carry a burden often don't realize how strong they are until they look back. But look, you've endured nights that seemed endless. You've endured rejections that seemed fatal. You've crossed deserts that could have consumed your faith. And yet you're here. This alone proves your strength. Heaven doesn't waste processes. Every tear was a brick. Every pain was training. Every rejection was strengthening. And now you realize that all of this was construction, building a fortress within yourself. This strength will change your posture. You will no longer walk bent over by the weight of circumstances. You will no longer live insecure about what others think. You will no longer be defined by the pain you've suffered. The strength you carry will straighten your spiritual spine. It will align your vision. It will give steadfastness to your journey. And when this strength manifests, even the environment around you will be impacted. Because people who walk in spiritual strength don't just survive, they transform atmospheres. They enter places and something changes. They release peace where there is chaos. They release hope where there is despair. And you will be that kind of person. The strength no one saw coming will be proof of God's favor in your life. It will be the silent testimony that you didn't fall by chance. You were trained. You didn't collapse out of weakness, but was strengthened in battle. And now he rises as one who not only survived, but conquered. Prepare yourself, because this strength will not remain hidden for long. It is already overflowing. It is already becoming visible. And when everyone sees it, there will be no denying it. What sustained you was not human. It was the breath of God. It was the hand of the Most High. It was the heavenly strength that no one saw coming, but which now everyone will see in action. I carry the strength that no one saw coming. Heaven sustained me, trained me, and now manifests in me a power that surprises and transforms. There are moments in life when injustice seems to scream louder than the truth. You have been unjustly accused. You have been singled out without explanation. You have been judged by eyes that knew nothing of your story. And perhaps you've asked yourself, "Why, Lord? Why am I silent in the face of so many lies? Why do you allow them to speak without knowing the truth?" But listen, heaven is not blind. Heaven does not ignore what you have been through. Heaven does not remain silent forever. There is an appointed time for divine justice. And when that time comes, no human word can resist. No lie can remain standing. No earthly judgment can silence the voice of heavenly truth. Have you noticed? The justice of men is limited. It fails. It is corrupted by interests, by appearances, by favoritism. But God's justice is perfect. It does not fail. It does not arrive late. It cannot be manipulated. And it is this justice that is on its way to you. While many thought you had been forgotten, God was noting every detail. While some tried to erase your name, heaven wrote your story in letters of fire. While cruel words were spoken against you, God's silence was not indifference. It was preparation for the day when He Himself would vindicate you. When heaven renders justice, it is not just reparation. It is a testimony. It is a public act. It is an unexpected turning point. It is as if the scales were turned before everyone's eyes, and those who were convinced of your downfall will need to witness your exaltation. The process of injustice was painful. You were hurt by people who should have protected you. You were judged by people who never walked your path. You were rejected without a chance to defend yourself. But this did not go unnoticed by the Creator. The same God who saw Joseph sold into slavery. The same God who saw Daniel thrown into the lion's den. The same God who saw Jesus unjustly crucified. This same God saw what happened to you. And just as their story did not end in injustice, yours will not end either. When heaven dispenses justice, the table changes. The one who was rejected becomes honored. The one who was humiliated becomes exalted. The one who was forgotten becomes remembered. And this doesn't happen in silence. It happens before the very people who doubted. That's why today's word is prophetic. You will not be justified by your own strength. You won't need to fight with the weapons of the flesh. You won't need to prove who you are. God will do it for you. And when He acts, there's no denying it. Many thought injustice was the end, but in truth, it was the stage for the manifestation of God's glory. What seemed like defeat was actually a stage of preparation. Because it is when the darkness is deepest that the light shines most brightly. And your life will shine in such a way that no one will be able to deny. It was heaven that dispensed justice. Do you remember how many times you held back tears in silence? How many times have you not had the courage to defend yourself? How many times have you simply bent your knees and said, "Lord, I trust in you, even though I don't understand"? It was at that moment that justice began to be written, not on earth, but on the eternal throne, because every prayer of surrender is recorded as a heavenly decree. And now, that decree begins to manifest. The winds are changing, the scales are tipping. The time of silence is turning into a time of revelation. Those who mocked you will see your victory. Those who disbelieved your calling will see your permanence. Those who spoke lies will see the truth triumph. When heaven dispenses justice, it is not just you who are honored. God's very name is glorified. Because everyone will see that it was not luck, it was not chance, it was not human strength. It was divine intervention. It was the Lord raising his case and saying, "This is my son, this is my daughter. No one touches him without my permission." God's justice is not revenge. It is not driven by hate. It is driven by love. It is the protection of a father who does not allow lies to prevail over the truth. It is the correction of a king who rules with equity. It is the care of a shepherd who defends his sheep from the attack of wolves. And justice will come in surprising ways. Don't 5,000, 5,000. It will be as you imagined. It will be greater. It will be deeper. It will be more visible. Because God will not only clear your name, he will raise your life as a testimony. And everyone will see the difference between those who trust in the Lord and those who trust in their own strength. So stand firm. Don't defend yourself with human words. Don't waste energy trying to prove anything. Heaven has already decided its verdict. And the verdict is clear. You will be justified, honored, and lifted up before the eyes of all. Heaven is my righteousness. The time of humiliation is over. The Lord raises me up and proves before everyone that his hand has always been upon me. There was a season when silence seemed to be your only companion. You cried out and it seemed like heaven didn't answer. You waited and nothing changed. The people around you didn't understand your process and you wondered, does God still hear me? Has he forgotten me? God's silence was heavy. It wasn't just the absence of words. It was the absence of movement. It was the feeling of being still, while everyone else moved forward. It was the weight of living in a weight that seemed endless. But listen, the silence was never abandonment. The silence was preparation. God wasn't distant, he was working. And while you thought nothing was happening, profound things were being aligned in the invisible. The time of silence was necessary. It was in silence that you learned to trust without evidence. It was in silence that your faith stopped depending on external signs. It was in silence that you discovered that God's presence doesn't depend on words, but on essence. It was in silence that you understood that a promise isn't measured by noise, but by the faithfulness of the one who made it. And now the prophetic announcement has arrived. The time of silence is over. The season changes. The wind blows in a different direction. The same voice that was silent now rises to speak loudly over you. The same promises that seemed dormant now begin to manifest. The same God who seemed distant now reveals himself palpably. Prepare yourself because your voice will also be heard. During the silence, many ignored you. During the silence, your presence seemed invisible. During the silence, your value seemed forgotten. But now, the Lord raises his voice through you. He will put words in your mouth that carry weight, impact, and authority. You will speak, and you will no longer be ignored. You will arise, and you will no longer be invisible. Your voice will echo like a trumpet, because the time of silence is over. This breakthrough will not only be internal, it will be visible. Doors that were closed will open. Invitations that never came will now arrive. Recognition that seemed distant will now knock on your door. Not because you sought it, but because heaven decreed it. The time of silence is over. Look at the story of Hannah. She wept in silence in the temple. She was humiliated by Peninnah, forgotten by many, misunderstood even by the priest. But one day the silence was broken, and her voice was heard by heaven. And she conceived Samuel, living proof that the time of silence has an end. Look at the story of Jesus. For years he lived in anonymity, in silence. But when the appointed time came, he opened his mouth, and his words divided history into before and after. The time of silence always prepares for a time of manifestation. So it is with you. Your years of silence were not wasted. They built roots. They generated depth. They gave you substance. And now that the time to speak has come, you will not speak empty words. You will release words full of life. When heaven breaks the silence, the earth needs to hear. And what will be spoken through you will not be forgotten. Because it will not be just your voice, it will be the voice of the Spirit using your mouth as a trumpet. And it will echo in hearts, in homes, in the places where your presence reaches. Perhaps you think, but I have nothing to say. And I tell you, silence gave you content. Every tear that fell became a message. Every pain experienced became a teaching. Every weight endured became a testimony. Now, what seemed like mere suffering transforms into living words to heal others. You were prepared in silence to be used in sound. And now, when you open your mouth, the impact will be greater because it comes from a deep place. It will not be just speech, it will be anointing. It will not be just words, it will be power. It will not be just speech, it will be transformation. Listen carefully. The time of silence is over for you. You will enter environments that previously did not see you. You will be heard in places that previously ignored your voice. Your message will find hearts ready to receive it. And this will not be human merit. It will be the fulfillment of purpose. The season has changed. The desert has given way to the river. Waiting has given way to harvest. Silence has given way to proclamation. And you are in the eye. Enter this turning point. Stand up, because this is no longer the time to hide. Raise your voice, because this is no time to be silent. Declare what God has done for you, and heaven will amplify it. The time for silence is over. Heaven rises in my favor, my voice will be heard, and the truth will be revealed before all. The moment has arrived. The one you waited for in tears. The one that seemed distant. The one that seemed impossible. This is the time when the invisible becomes visible. This is the time when the hidden promise materializes before your eyes. This is the time when heaven moves and earth can no longer deny it. The prophetic turning point is not just a change in circumstances. It is a change of atmosphere. It is when everything that seemed contrary begins to cooperate. It is when resistance gives way to favor. It's when the door that had been locked for years suddenly opens with ease. You thought you had been forgotten, but you were being reserved. You thought you were late, but you were being aligned. You believed you had wasted time, but in truth, you were being prepared to recover in a single instant what seemed distant. The prophetic turnaround comes to confound those who didn't believe in you. It comes to silence those who mocked your journey. It comes to show that what sustains your life is not the opinion of men, but the decree of God. Look at Joseph. For years, he was forgotten in a prison. His gifts seemed invisible. His interpretations had no immediate echo. But in a single day, the prophetic turnaround took him out of prison and placed him in the palace. God didn't need a lengthy process, just an instant. And in that instant, everything changed. So it will be with you. The turnaround that God is bringing is sudden, but not improvised. It is the fruit of years of silent preparation. It is the accumulated answer to prayers you had already forgotten. It is the harvest of seeds planted with pain, watered with tears, but guarded in faith. The manifestation of the prophetic turnaround does not happen to inflate your ego, but to glorify the name of the Lord. When the improbable manifests, no one can deny it was God. When the door opens effortlessly, no one can say it was human strategy. When favor pours out without explanation, everyone will have to acknowledge it was the hand of God. And see, this turnaround is not just external. It begins within you. You are no longer the same person who entered the desert. You now carry firmness, clarity, maturity. The turnaround has already begun in the invisible, and now it will only be reflected in the visible. Listen carefully. The season of your life has changed. You have entered another time. You no longer need to defend yourself because your own life has become a testimony. You no longer need to beg for acceptance because now doors will open naturally. What was once a struggle will now be surrender. What was once sweat will now be grace. The prophetic turning point is the moment you stop living for survival and begin living for abundance. It's when you realize that your story doesn't end in shame, but in honor. It's when you understand that every tear, every long night, every silence was not in vain. Everything pointed to this moment. The heavens are announcing the time of change has arrived, and this turning point will be public. What happened inside will be revealed outside. What was hidden will be manifest. What seemed small will be magnified. What seemed finished will now be resurrected with strength. Don't be surprised when those who ignored you begin to seek you out. Don't be alarmed when those who doubted come seeking advice. Don't be surprised when opportunities arise without human effort, because that's what the prophetic turnaround does. It reverses roles. Those who laughed are now silent. Those who mocked are now observing. Those who rejected are now respecting. The turnaround won't be in just one area, but in all. There will be emotional, financial, spiritual, and relational restoration. What was blocked in one aspect of your life will now unlock in a series. You will enter a season of acceleration, where blessings will come in waves, and you will realize that lost time will be made up with interest. Look around you. Things are not as they were. You feel in your spirit that something has changed, and this feeling is not imagination. It is the inner testimony that heaven has already decreed your turnaround. You will no longer be the person remembered for your struggles. You will be the person remembered for your victory. They will no longer speak only of the tears you shed. They will speak of the table God has prepared before you in the presence of your adversaries. It will no longer be the story of those who suffered, but of those who overcame through the power of the promise. This is the mark of a turning point. You cease to be a victim and become living evidence of divine favor. Your life begins to preach without you having to raise your voice. Your presence begins to carry weight because it is no longer about your story, but about God, us who wrote your story. And here is the final word of this chapter. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It wasn't coincidence. It was decree. It was promise. It was divine alignment. Heaven wrote, and now the earth must obey. The prophetic turnaround can no longer be postponed. It is yours now. The time of my turnaround has come. Heaven has decreed, the earth has manifested, and nothing can stop what God has determined for me. The time of my turnaround has come. Heaven has decreed, the earth has manifested, and nothing can stop what God has determined for me. The time of my turnaround has come. Heaven has decreed, the earth has manifested, and nothing can stop what God has determined for me. If this message spoke to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who also needs to hear that the time of silence is over and that their voice will be heard. And when you feel you need more prophetic direction, Choose the next video that resonates with your soul. Heaven has different words for each season of your life, and you are ready to receive them.